Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Today we've got a special guest, and that's Rupert, the CEO of Bitcoin.com.au. How you going, Rupert?
Good, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, mate. Now we've got a number of things to talk about. You're also a founding board member of ADCAR. They've been very busy lately with regulation and all that sort of thing. So there's plenty to talk about. But let's dive in. What is Bitcoin.com.au?
So Bitcoin.com.au is the leading retail exchange in Australia. So it's been in business for about 4 years now, and we've really tried to center digital currency towards the mass market. So where we started in that journey was really about putting posters on the street that were, buy Bitcoin in store in 60 seconds, and trying to create that aspirational brand for this new technology. Really, because it's decentralized, there's no marketing budget for Bitcoin, and anyone can pretend to be a service provider or offer, whatever they want. And half of them used to be scams, and this was a long time ago. So we really pioneered that brand identity and service to the customer. And now we're launching internationally as Bitcoin.eu, Bitcoin.ca, and Bitcoin.co.uk.
That's fantastic, mate. I think a lot of people might have seen in the news recently your news agencies. I think there's over 1,200 now where you've rolled out Bitcoin and recently Ethereum. How's that all going?
So I think that's actually a really impressive service to the end user. What we've generated is someone can walk into a store and say, I would like one Bitcoin or one Ethereum, and walk out in 20 minutes with that digital currency delivered to any third party wallet. So you don't need to go to a website at all. You can be walking down the street and within 20 minutes own digital currency. So how that process works is we've built in the ability to scan any third party wallet address on the point of sale. You get the price live, you hand over the cash, you do your KYC verification as per the regulation as of late.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the service. So it's really lowering that barrier to entry and trying to get this ecosystem ready for mass market. I'm not sure if you saw there was a recent ADCA survey that was put on with Deloitte, Accenture. It was something like 1.3% of Australians have a digital currency account. And really, I think if we try to 10x that number, it's going to be insane to think of what the infrastructure needs to get to and what the everyday person is looking for.
How much have you seen it change since 2015 in terms of the average customer that's now buying crypto? Because you deal a lot, I know, with the higher end of town as well now.
So I think the general perception, I think, is it's still in this kind of speculative bubble, so that you could say, in terms of people are really buying this cryptocurrency to trade it. And we've always centered our service around bringing it out to mass market. And I do see there being some challenges in that, particularly that the general person wants to get into this for its utility. And if we want to 10x cryptocurrency and really make it mainstream or, critical mass, so to speak, it has to become a utility to everyday people. And that really requires touch points and infrastructure to be developed. As much as, as you can see with the charts behind me, I'm also into trading and that type of thing. And I do enjoy a technical analysis every now and then. But really, what I think is important is that people can purchase a television, or they can pay a bill, or they can go to the milk bar, and we start to build digital currency into the everyday touch points. And if we can do that, then I think that it'll have a huge change on moving this from a nascent tech into an everyday tech that everyone knows about and everyone considers as normal as the Australian dollar or buying a Tesla ticket or whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think Living Room of Satoshi and Travel by Bit and similar companies are doing a fantastic job. Would you say that Australia are sort of leading adoption? I know you get around to a fair few countries. I just think we're doing a fantastic job at the moment in terms of being able to actually spend our crypto.
I do think so, and I think it's one of these chicken and the egg arguments where you need infrastructure to reflect the size of the network. It's not that important to build, 100,000 stores that are going to accept cryptocurrency if it's not actually usable as money. And I think on that basis, Australia is leading the way, particularly on its rational sense and the application of regulation for digital currency.
Yeah.
With the work I've been doing with ADCA, we've been discussing with AUSTRAC the recent regulation for about 2 years, and that's been a great rapport, and that's really important to develop the right type of ecosystem because it's in communication with the ecosystem. Personally, I'm really excited about the Lightning Network, and I think that that is moving at a pace much faster than I was expecting. And I think that this is where we're starting to see the emergence of more utility behind cryptocurrency. I mean, one application which I'm really looking forward to is splitting bills at dinner. So if you're ever out to dinner with more than two parties and you try to split a bill and it's just a complete nightmare, with a simple application, a simple line of code, we could really optimize that service. And I think that's going to be the next evolution in this ecosystem.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I saw this morning the Lightning node count past 2,000, and once we have a really user-friendly wallet, it's going to make it so easy for people to start to do that. So do you want to talk about what else AG could do and how they sort of interact with government bodies and help form that regulation in Australia? Because I know a lot of people are, anti-government, whatever, but so far the regulation's been fairly good, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's chicken the egg. 'Cause I've had ongoing communications with AUSTRAC representing ADCA in the industry. And just if people aren't aware, ADCA represents the digital currency ecosystem in Australia. I think there's about 12 or 13 exchanges that are signed up. And then there's 40 large organizations that are members, including ENY, ME Bank, ING, there's AusPost, Victorian government. But there's a large kind of consumer level behind it. What that's meant to do is try to have a common voice. So when it comes to serious decisions, there's someone who's kind of holding that torch, representing the private industry that that people can interface with. So in that, the conversations with AUSTRAC, it's very difficult because regulators, what they try to do is they try to understand something and be reactive to its implications. There is a certain push and pull dynamic between what regulators are trying to solve and what private industry is trying to do. Yeah. So in that basis, it's very hard to have a conversation where you walk into a room and you tell, the government and all that, oh, you're going to be disrupted and, all of this is outside of your control. And there's a certain element in this tech that is. And I remember going into an AUSTRAC room and saying, here's a line of code and you can create 2,000 Bitcoin wallets a second on your laptop. This is outside of the box to what you would existingly call banking or financial services. So it's very difficult to get those conversations across in a rational sense. But I think that the rapport has been quite positive. There's still some areas that I think need work, particularly around consumer protection and security. As I'm sure you're aware, and most people that are in the cryptocurrency space for a while, that one of the biggest risks is actually mismanagement, social engineering, and hacking. Yeah. I'd say it's about 2 exchanges a year that go down because they've had some internal failure. And really, I think that's what we need regulators to focus on is, well, what about insurance? Insurance agencies are very difficult to speak to when you mention the word cryptocurrency. And so are security firms. And I think that that's really where I want to see the conversation moving towards next in Australia.
Yeah, I agree. We've got to do a really good job of those on-ramps and off-ramps, reducing friction, but having it nice and safe for consumers as well. Do you want to talk about the International Decentralized Association of Cryptocurrency and Blockchain? So a bit of a mouthful, but you're the only Australian representative, and that's trying to be the United Nations of crypto.
So the IDACB was set up at the start of this year. What it's trying to achieve is a dialogue between countries towards regulation and understanding of this ecosystem. So I'm on the board there, representing ADCA, which represents Australia. And so far, I think it's between about 70 and 90 countries have joined up, with the next meeting in May in Moscow. So there's a few government officials from a few countries and then leading industry organizations. Really, in this space, one of the issues is, so if you look at AUSTRAC only has vested power to regulate entities inside Australia. Because this technology is global and digital, really what we're creating is a few hubs which are going to become the dominant players for industry in digital currency. And so what really is needed is a global recognition of regulation and communication. So because of that, and because we're also launching into Netherlands, UK, and Canada, it really put on the forefront the need to address this global standardization of regulation. We, as a company, have the decision to incorporate in Australia, and that will fundamentally come down to the regulatory requirements. And so what I think is important in the IDACB is to start that forum and to really start and engage those countries. I remember in February, Malta was one of the key influences in the conversations we had. And recently they've come out with quite a positive landscape for digital currency. And I think that this is what we need in this ecosystem.
Just quickly, I know the ATO reached out for feedback on tax. Do you think that they do run that risk if we overtax and over-regulate, that it's very easy as digital entities, as you said, to incorporate in a Malta or another country nearby? Do you think Australia's wary of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is again where there's that meeting halfway when it comes to understanding digital currency from a regulatory perspective. And there is concerns that if the approach is too heavy-handed, then you will migrate business internationally and just keep a very light touch to that organization or the country that they offer service to. Yeah. I think that the tax is going to be a key aspect to this, and I hope that the ATO has a fostering policy towards cryptocurrency, particularly on the crypto trades, where that was completely left out of AUSTRAC's vision. Yeah. But the ATO seems to be quite over it. So,
yeah. I mean, personally, I feel very strongly about that crypto to crypto law, as we have platforms and apps like Ethereum doing these microtransactions. In the future, it will literally be impossible, particularly for the average person, to track all these things that are happening on their phone or smart device. So something that I hope they're very wary of. How do you see the future playing out, mate, in Australia if we are leaders? And I know you can't talk too much about some things you're working on behind the scenes, but what would you love to see in the next couple of years happen in Australia?
So, yeah, I think that, where this market is right now is at a point of consolidation. So what I really think we're going to see is the beginning of more service provision and quite large companies. I mean, I don't feel like the big players are really understood yet. And I was looking at the speakers at Consensus this year, and there's a lot of conversations about decentralized exchanges and these types of platforms. Yeah. And so I think that what we're still doing to date, and this is one of my biggest issues in this space, is that we've onboarded a huge amount of people, but everyone seems to be quite happy leaving all their money and all their profits on Binance or whatever the exchange is, without understanding that it's pretty much an unregulated bank. There's value in that, obviously, from a speculative basis, but really what we need to do is innovate on the status quo. Digital currency is still at its early days of adoption. And I think that what we're going to see is the development of some major players in this space that don't just become a bank, but become so much more from a existing financial service perspective, whether it's the point of sale, it's a lending facility, it's a bank, it's the trader, it's the tax consulting, whatever it may be. But I think that we're just starting to see the beginning of consolidation of those entities and the expansion of the touch points, I guess you could say. Again, cryptocurrency today to what cryptocurrency could be is still very different.
100%. I think that's a great place to wrap it up, mate. I think these conversations are so important to have as well, because there's so much happening behind the background and we often get lost in the speculation side of things. So I appreciate you joining us today, mate. Any final words or?
No, thanks for having me on, Nuggets. I'm a big fan of your show, so it's great to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, mate. Cheers.
All right. Have a good one. Bye.